Ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor and privilege to introduce Professor Tatiana Gabroussenko, who's going to speak on the topic of Yǒngye Kunin, or an honorary veteran, and North Korean identities. Professor Gabroussenko majored in history at Far Eastern State University in Vladivostok in former Russia. She also attended Yonsei University and completed her PhD at Australian National University in Melbourne, in Australia. She's presently teaching at Korea University on North Korean studies. She published a number of articles on Korea, and her recent book is Soldiers on the Cultural Front, Developments in the Early History of North Korean Literature and Literary Policy, published by University of Hawaii Press in 2010, which was well received. And, it has been included in the Choice Annual List of Outstanding Academic Titles in 2011. We all know Professor Andrei Lankov, who is one of the most popular speakers at our lecture meetings, and she happens to be the wife of Professor Andrei Lankov. So without further ado, let's welcome Professor with a big round of applause.
Thank you very much. I just would like to add one thing, just apart from being...
Can you?
Apart from being a wife of Andrei Lankov, I also was, he was also my professor. So that is more relevant to this. So he was my tutor. Okay, so the topic which I'm going to present you today, because now I'm teaching in Korea University, and I'm teaching North Korean culture and history and propaganda studies. So my research is relevant to this topic. And today I'm going to present you a very interesting, the topic which I find very interesting is the topic of Yǒngye Kunin, or disabled or honourable veterans, and their role in North Korean, in forming contemporary North Korean national identity. And just before we start the topic, I would like to give you a few words about militarism in North Korean propaganda, in North Korean culture, and its role in North Korean national identity. Because all of us know that a policy of nuclear brinkmanship, to which the DPRK has consistently resorted over the past 2 decades, gave rise to and fed the overseas perception of this country as the monstrous military state which is ready to attack any moment the civilized world, and as the major source of instability in the Asia Pacific. And indeed, if we look at the works of North Korean propaganda, it seems to support this perception of North Korea. I will give you a few things like military parades, which are widely covered by North Korean press, and posters. What you see here is just simple New Year's greeting cards. But as you see, they all include just images of military and marching soldiers and etc. More important things, military games, Kumsanri, which are really popular among North Korean kids, were promoted as such, and this thing is that this title of this poster is just beating American Boston, such fun, something like this. So this military game, which involved beating American buses, its similarity is great. So it seems that indeed North Korean self-perception is just similar to what we expect from them. Also, if we look at rhetoric, which North Korean press consistently resort to, such as "Prof" or desperate readiness to die for the leader of the country and the party. This rhetoric is used not only in press for adults, but for little kids. They all taught to be ready to die for the leader. Another one, Chon Patan, other diet, another kind of rhetoric. We are sons and daughters of guns and bombs. And you see this lovely picture of the guy who's ready to die. Or a piece of North Korean children's poetry. The whole world envies us. The whole world is afraid of us. We are the nation of the sun. The nation which shines under the slogan of Chūche. We are the sons and daughters of guns and bombs. So everything seems to support this perception of North Korea. And indeed, I agree with John Tibeli in his saying that North Korean military is an embodiment of North Korean national identity. Without the military, the regime is simply not viable. Just some observers today, they tend to link the contemporary North Korean passion for arms and military rhetoric with this official slogan, Sǒn'gun, military first era, which took nationwide debut in 1996-1998. Many researchers perceive Sǒn'gun as a departure from previous course of Chūche course. However, I would like to say that I disagree with this perception because North Korea was born as a guerrilla state. We always have to remember, and military has always been an integral part of North Korean society and its foundation mythology. Always North Korean society and propaganda since its nation started to share such constant features as prioritization of the military in all spheres of North Korean life, preferential allocation of resources to the army, constant calls for involvement and support from the public for the army, and rhetoric of mutual love between the army and the people. So they were all constant features. However, if we look at these recent examples of North Korean, current examples of North Korean military propaganda, we will find something different. We will find that the rhetoric and imagery of contemporary North Korean works of literature and art, and when I say works of literature and art, I mean, of course, official endorsed literature and art, because in North Korea there is nothing else, no other works. So we will see that current delivery of North Korean military propaganda challenges our common perception of the nation's degree of aggressiveness. And this new narration, military narration, they are filled with imagery and rhetoric, which reveal other and more complex social goals and agendas underneath this usual rhetoric, underneath this usual prioritization of martial arts and martial spirit in North Korean culture and the new laws of North Korean military. And to comprehend the meaning of this new narration, we should look at the specific of contemporary militarization of Korea, take it in historical perspective. Despite the fact that North Korean Sǒn'gun military first started since the end of the 90s, the actual watershed between the traditional kind of militarism and contemporary militarism lay something around late 80s, so a bit decades earlier than Sǒn'gun policy actually was initiated. And in my understanding, it's two different kinds of state militarism, because they were driven by different agendas. State militarism until 1950s and late 80s, it relied upon first thing written memories of the Korean War and real episodes of military confrontation with the enemy, and genuine endeavors of the government to keep the DPRK armed forces militarized for another offensive. And what is more important, militarism in this first 3 decades of existence of North Korean state. It was an essential part of North Korean official ideology which had not yet exhausted its credibility. And relative material stability which North Korean society at the moment enjoys was ascribed to the efforts of Korean People's Army. And on the other hand, the efficient isolationist policy barred citizens from access to any consistent information at the moment. So what you see here, this is posters and pictures and paintings which were made in the 1980s, 1970s. They all depict North Koreans as attacking or involved in military, which is involved in some military activity. The leader is always the leading people here. However, in 1980s, this course started to change because the enormous standing North Korean People's Army hasn't been involved in any military activity for this year, and people felt it because the country is North Korean military system is a conscription system. So the majority of people spend their lives in the military, mostly not fighting every enemy, or rather just like this program. Shepherding some wolves and working on the bubble gum factories, etc., etc. So, and constructing grounds, etc., etc. So, actually, military is used as payless force in North Korea, payless disciplined force, and this changed, significantly changed the perception of the military in the eyes of North Korean population. Since the late 80s, other social tendencies happened in North Korean society. State distribution systems experienced attrition, and North Korean people experienced strong decrease of living and material standards. And because of that, they naturally became more involved and more concerned with personal welfare, rather than with reciprocal protection of their state. On the other hand, this crawling marketization of North Korea, it led to gradual erosion of the Iron Curtain. So North Koreans found themselves exposed to challenging discourses through smuggled DVD, and the other sources. More contacts with the outside world. How did North Korean propaganda react to this? They did not, North Korean policymakers, they did not change this, they did not reject militarism totally, this militaristic propaganda, because this, for many reasons. First of all this militarist propaganda has great mobilizing potential, which no totalitarian state can refuse. Then the legacy of North Korean state was based on this guerrilla history, so it started as the military, as the state created by the military. So, how North Korean policymakers reacted to this? They created quasi-military environment. So, if you see at the contemporary North Korean images of the army, domestic images, images in domestic propaganda, in most cases, this is beautiful girls who dressed in military uniform, smiling people, etc. So military is mostly placed, presented in more softer, sentimental ways. For instance, that is one of the recent pictures, which is called A Letter from Home. It's soldiers is looking at this picture of his young boy, his little boy. So always smiling and never involved in any actual activity. Another thing, this military, which is just military people who are always around the leader, but not the leader like Kim Il-sung, who shows them to attack an enemy, but rather the leader who's just taking care of them in a motherly kind of, fatherly kind of way. And this is two pictures which depict a famous part of North Korean mythology, how a great leader one day, great leader number two, came to some military unit, and he taught soldiers to temper their bodies with cold shower, with cold water. And in the other pictures, since the time of this military unit, soldiers who served in this military unit, they started to train themselves to temper their bodies with cold shower. So this is a story which has very little relevance to military activity. It's rather very sentimental attachment between the leader and his sons and daughters in military uniform. Just in a number of North Korean posters, North Korean paintings, you will see military people who are smiling, who just smiling, spinning, and entertaining, and not doing anything related to military. So this the military activity. So in the late 80s, the major goals of military propaganda has changed, and rather it was stimulation of North Korean society by creating a sense of false emergency. And it created an illusion of common goals. It distracted popular attention from the faults of the economic and political strategy promoted by the ruling elite. And it, of course, was used for justification of material deficiencies and harsh anti-democratic policies of the state leadership. And of course, like in other similar types of society, military was used for stimulation of national pride in moments of actual national disgrace. At the center of new narrations of North Korean military lies the idea of the inner self-sacrificial spirit of military people as the best part of North Korean society. This self-sacrificial spirit, which is embodied by men in uniform, it is considered as a counterbalance to the unwanted spread of consumerism and mercenary spirit among the overtly liberalized civilians. What is more important, this self-sacrificial attitude of the military has to be reciprocated. So military propaganda in North Korea, it reproduces reciprocal pattern of self-sacrificial relationship between the military and the civilians. And this embodiment of these policies, the embodiment of this new approach is the narrative of Yǒngye Kunin, honourable and for disabled honourable veterans. It's a complex, it's a short term, but it contains many meanings. So just a few words about this term, when it was first invented, created, and how it evolved. In North Korea, this first mention of honourable soldiers or disabled soldiers just appeared first after Korean War. And it involved people who, just by the expression of the great leader number one, Kim Il-sung, people who protected their country with their blood. So they were just normal veterans who became disabled or died or deceased during some military actions, combat operations. So this was the initial the initial meaning of this term. However, slowly this term evolved into different directions. Because, as I told you, North Korean military since the late 80s is not involved, to be precise, since 80s, it was not involved in any actual military activity. So the actual activity of North Korean military is huge industrial projects such as construction dams or just irrigation system, etc., etc. So this is fairly force, and this is not just a force, it's force which moves there on voluntarily. So people who are working on this project, they are normally in North Korea. There is very limited, very poor working condition in this place. It's very poor roads, just poor work safety, almost non-existent, and very limited medical help at the moment. And this is quite normal that just people who became just victim, disabled or handicapped after some just military service in North Korea. There were just huge number of these people. North Korean propaganda equated people who became handicapped or disabled or even died during some industrial accidents in industrial places, and equated them to normal veterans who served, just normal veterans who died or became disabled during combat, just during military operations. And officially, Yǒngye Kunin and North Korea, they officially regarded as heroes, in contrast to non-military handicapped people who are widely discriminated and ignored. And this is one of the most wild paradoxes of North Korea, because, for instance, we have a huge construction of Masan Dam in 1980. If you happened, or some person happened to be handicapped during became victim of some industrial accident during this construction, and he was not lucky to be in the military, he was disregarded, and he was totally despised by the society and treated as worthless people. In North Korean mentality, in North Korean power, there is a strict definition between and so people who are worthless and people who are worth, who have some worth and who have no worth. So if you happen to be non-military at the moment and you became handicapped during this operation, you are despised and you treated very badly, very discriminated. If, for instance, you live in Pyongyang or big cities, you will be removed. You will be moved somewhere just on the outback, so that the other people won't see you much, and you will be ignored by the people around. So the life perspectives are very bad. However, if at the moment this person works nearby you, and if he is in the military at the moment, this person who is a victim of the same industrial accident, he will be labeled as bright, as honourable veteran, and he will be entitled to a number of prestigious benefits in North Korea, such as just entering party, entering party, and entering universities, etc., etc. So many benefits will be bestowed on you. What you see here is just a place, it's just a sanatorium for Yǒngye Kunin, so for honourable soldiers or honourable veterans. At the same time, this handicapped, just normal handicapped people, they are despised and discriminated. This is one of the interesting part of North Korean reality. And what is more important, that civilians, North Korean civilians, are found to commit reciprocal self-sacrifice, because these people are treated as heroes who sacrifice their health or their life for the country, the party, and the people. So the civilians are found to commit reciprocal self-sacrifice. And the most odd, the most bizarre practice, which is related to this honourable veteran exists in North Korea, is the practice of proposing to an honourable veteran and becoming his or her spouse-cum-nurse, or like in North Korean, turning oneself into his or her legs, eyes, and arms. And in many cases, just in the majority of cases, the girl or the boy who's supposed to propose to this veteran, honourable veteran never even met this person before. So don't even know how this person looks like. So it's very bizarre, very strange practice. However, it is widely propagated by North Korean media. Cases like this, they are propagated by North Korean media, and they receive coverage, wide coverage in North Korea. So in reality, what is the reality of Yǒngye Kunin? How we can say about it? Of course, not living in North Korea, we can judge this practice of Yǒngye Kunin only by the testimony of the detectives. And Professor Kim Suk-hyun, working in Women's University, she investigated the reality of Yǒngye Kunin in North Korea, just as it appeared in the testimonies of the detectives. And they say that indeed these cases exist, and most of the detectives could remember such case around. And they say that in reality, of course, these people entitled to many benefits such as free marriage fees, and for the girl who proposed, the girl or the boy. It's very important that this merit, this practice doesn't is not gender specified, because so often the boy who is proposing an honourable female with honourable vision, because in North Korea both boys and girls serve in the army. So why do people do this? And North Korean detectives all tend to explain this by some practical motives, because they say that these people probably search for some benefits. These people search, or they have very dim matrimonial perspectives. They are or just have some other deficiency, or probably they belong to low Sǒn'gun, so the social, they belong to low social caste. So by marrying a person like this, they have the hope to raise in social status. And one of the cases which two detectives recollected, it were the girl who always was very politically conscientious, and she always wanted to enter the party. For sure, she was doing some career in management, in local management, and she reached some hope in her own career perspective. So for her, it was a good chance to promote in her career. And just by testimonies of North Korean detectives, despite the fact that North Korean propaganda extolled these cases, in real people treat them negatively, because they say it's crazy. They all refer to the people as nitchino, it's crazy. they just it's silly, it's crazy, and they say that the marriages, the actual marriages of girl or boy with Yǒngye Kunin, they all just always look like funerals, because parents cry all the time. What I would like to say, just one thing which is important for us to remember, that it is not forcible practice. In reality, in North Korea, it's not forcible. It's something that people do voluntarily. That's one thing. And another thing is that there is a way out, which is really important. It's not, it's not that you sell yourself forever, just forever and ever. And by testimonies of North Korean detectives, many people, many marriages, they unfortunately finish with divorce, because both sides are not able to tolerate each other, etc. So there's many divorces, they experience many divorces at the end. However, there is only an explanation of one side, because North Korean detectives, they have all the reasons to they are quite disillusioned about North Korean propaganda and about North Korean reality, so they tend to see darker sides in these cases like this. But of course, there must be different cases, because they are too humorous to ignore. And of course, we can't dismiss the other motives, more idealistic motives, charitable motives, when the girls probably are driven by some desire to make something good in their life or something else. And why it happened? Why some people are sincerely driven to this path? I think that partially this tendency can be explained by very well work of North Korean propaganda. Because I studied North Korean propaganda. I'm a very big fan of it. Actually, not a fan, but I found it very effective because it works good. Even me sometimes when I watch the films with Yǒngye Kunin, I always think, that's great. So this first impression. Aesthetically, the films are attractive, very good, and all this works. But still, it's very important. It's very important to separate this aesthetic part of these films, aesthetic part, and propaganda messages which they send. This works of North Korean propaganda, which devote to this topic of Yǒngye Kunin. Just this romances with Yǒngye Kunin, this very popular topic of North Korean culture. This has nothing to do with films, I just put it for your entertainment. That's all. This is nice romance, and I hope this guy is totally, he's not blind, definitely, I'm not sure about his legs, but probably he's normal. Just he's not handicapped. So this is a romance, and two films which are really popular in North Korea, which describe this topic of Yǒngye Kunin. This is Traces of Life. It's passing episode, important but passing episode, which was made in 1997, and then Girls in My Hometown, which were screened in 1990. One by a playwright, the playwright Chun-woo. And another one is literary fiction. It's a short story Mirror, which was published in 2009. It was written by Choi Han-mi, and it was based on real events. So what are the tropes of North Korean, this fictional paradigm of this Yǒngye Kunin? What messages North Korean propaganda want to deliver? This first message, which is really important, that Yǒngye Kunin are portrayed as canonized saints. So they are unconditionally entitled to public admiration. The second part, they are entitled to loyalty of their trophy spouses. And the third one, they are entitled to a bright future. Just the first thing, Yǒngye Kunin emerged as canonized saints who are entitled to public admiration no matter what Yǒngye Kunin has actually exactly achieved. And the sensibility of human and material costs of the exploits, they never debated. And here lies the major difference between Soviet propaganda, which in 1970s and 1980s glorified the similar cases of people who committed some exploits in an essentially peaceful atmosphere, of the Soviet Union. That was a very important part of Soviet propaganda in the 1970s, because it was the period when all this initial idealization, communist, self-sacrificial, idealistic spirit started to wane. Society became more and more individualized, more atomized. And so, in order to revive this spirit, Soviet propaganda widely just resorted to the cases, cases of people who committed some glorious exploits. One of the cases which I remember just during my childhood in 1972, it was quite glorification of Anatoly Merzlov. It was the young tractor driver who, during some fire on his harvesting field, he tried to save his tractor and died. So the Soviet propaganda, probably it was an accident. Most just normal explanation for us, it probably was a simple accident. However, Soviet propaganda widely glorified his case. And exactly like Yǒngye Kunin, this Anatoly Merzlov, he was equated with, just his exploit was equated to a soldier who saved his land with his just saved his land with his blood and with his life. So he gave his life in order to save his land. However, Soviet propaganda was just quickly encountered public response, which was quite opposite to what was actually propagated in this article. And Soviet media, there was just widespread discussion in media, in Soviet media, which actually questioned the reasonability, the sensibility of the session. And the person who said his determined word in the discussion was Soviet poet Konstantin Simonov, a very famous Soviet poet who was famous by his wartime poems. He said that yes, probably the guy was driven by high, by some high reasoning. However, the price was too high, and he quoted his own poem of the war. He said that mother will die, or just about the mother of a soldier who died. Mother will cry many bitter days, because even Victor won't bring his son to her. So that is the question. So this Soviet public opinion rejected the case, or at least the other side of the story, the other reasoning was heard in the Soviet, discussed in the Soviet media. And North Korean case is very different, because no objection, no questioning voices ever arise, despite the fact that some cases were very dubious. Another thing is that in Soviet Union, despite the fact that all these cases like Anatomy Nervous, they were widely propagated, at the same time, the other picture of the story was always on the surface, because people asked who was responsible for the situation that there was a fire in this harvesting area. Why? Where is the fire brigade? Where are people who are responsible for that? Because in the Soviet Union there was a funny aphorism at the moment. Then behind every act of heroism there is an act of somebody's negligence. There was a standard saying in the Soviet Union. In North Korea there is nothing like this, because no discussions at all. Despite the fact that some cases of this glorification of this exploit, they're very dubious. For instance, I will give you this just very characteristic case which was glorified in numerous North Korean works of art, including this mirror, the short story. It happened in 1998 when 17 male and female soldiers saved so-called sacred trees on the Mount Petkin from a fire. And trees bark was covered by presumably indigenous saints of Kim Il-sung's guerrilla troop, who at the moment was in Khabarovsk, not in this place. It was totally mythologized part of North Korean ideology. And some soldiers, as a result of this saving operation, some soldiers perished and some received severe burns. So you can understand that nobody and this is the picture of the tree. So the trees which are covered, and there is this girl who showing some inscriptions which were allegedly made by Kim Il-sung and his guerrilla troops at the moment. So North Korean propaganda, North Korean works of literature and art, including these cartoons for children. They glorify this case, and in these pictures, which this picture of cartoons which depict this exploit of the girls, there were girls shown as embracing the trees with their own bodies, covering the trees with their own bodies, protecting them. And of course, nobody asks if it works or not. If this is worse or not, because you're like, these trees are, of course, they are relevant to the leader, but in a very indirect way. This is artifact, and why you should sacrifice yourself for such things. However, all these North Korean cartoons for children, and the stories like Nero, they present these girls as beautiful, beautiful examples of just desperate readiness to fight for the leader and the party, only. So this desperate readiness. So these cases were glorified, widely glorified. And probably because these cases were not actually received such a public support. This case was one of the few when the actual nature of this exploit was explained to population. Normally, this action is not even explained. What the hero was just a man who moved to the army, and he came back with no eyes or with no legs, and he is treated as a soldier. What he committed, why it happened, this question is not raised, and this, no circumstances are revealed, disclosed to regular people. So that's a regular attitude to North Korean propaganda, regular perception. Or another example, it's exploit of Yǒngye Kunin in this famous North Korean melodrama built in my hometown. A handsome squad officer, Shin loses his sight during an industrial accident, and he's extolled as a hero. Why? What happened? No question. So no explanation at all. So he, because he sacrificed himself for some deed of the party, he is treated as a hero. And because this canonized saints, they extol as self-sacrificial, warriors who self-sacrifice themselves, they entitled to a reciprocal self-sacrifice, human sacrifice, that of romantic partner, who are physically and spiritually perfect. What is interesting, that all these characters in all the stories, until they are beautiful, they are really impeccable physically. So they are always a trophy, it's really romantic, partners who are really trophy spouses. They are princes and princesses. And as in traditional Cinderella-like story, they appreciate moral perfection of Yǒngye Kunin, and they are broad-minded to the extent that they accept them totally accepting in regards to his or her disability. So how lovers are supposed to behave in this situation? Lovers are expected to be forced heroes, because any retreat of the course, of love to Yǒngye Kunin is treated as political misconduct and betrayal of revolutionary course of his or her romantic partner. And rejection of Yǒngye Kunin is shameful. It's treated as treason. So the traitors are socially ostracized and depicted as permanently unhappy. In fact, the people have no choice. They become either criminal or hero, so no way in between. The cases, the first romance, Traces of Life. The girl Pirsuni, she abandons Tilnak, her boyfriend, who had lost his leg during some unspecified incident. And Jinju, the chairperson of the collective farm, she convenes a meeting where she condemns the disloyal Pirsuni and proposes that she be expelled from the collective farm. Pirsuni regrets her behavior, and together with Jinju, she goes to ask for Tilnak's forgiveness. After a while, he at first rejects to take her back, but then he forgives, and the entire village celebrates their wedding party. So here are two parts of the film. The Pirsuni are you also use of our time, and this is just a huge criticizing campaign when the girl is driven to tears and she's so remorseful, and then at the end you see this happy marriage, supposedly happy. Unfortunately, there is no question how the girl feels about this marriage where she's forced to, and what is her feeling to the boy, and what is even more important, how they will after that. If the boy always remember that she was forced to marry him by the whole collective farm, the whole force of collective farm. So another one, another example, girls in my hometown. Anna is dating a handsome squad officer, Susan Tour, whose troops were helping farmers with the construction of irrigation channels. And when she loses his sight during an industrial accident, she abandons him, and people are outraged by this selfish act. And Anna's best friend Sine proposes to the blind officer and is extolled as heroine by everybody. So, and look how it is, how North Korean propaganda utilizes this case. This is when Sine returns, come back with her husband, blind husband, to her hometown. She is met by the school, just by the unit where her blind husband used to serve, and she is met with the following speech: "Comrade Sine, your true and noble comedy love sets a fine example for Korean women to all of us, officers and men. We would like you encourage us to give our lives unhesitatingly for the country and the revolution." And Sine, in response, she said that I will love him with sincere heart. This is my vow to the party. This is my vow to the party. And at the same time, Sine, just not Sine, but Una, she is portrayed, her act is portrayed as betrayal and as an act of selfishness and material greed, which are incompatible with the spirit of socialism, and not as act of self-defense or endeavor to avoid this lifelong ordeal and obligation before this soldier. And at the end of the film, Unha starts a remorse. I betrayed my love and friendship for my own self. The girls like me can betray a party and the country. I thought you will never forgive me. I make a vow to you, like Sine, your husband, I'll give my all to the country and the revolution. If occasion calls, I'll dedicate my whole life to a disabled soldier. I swear before you. So this is the storyline, and probably for all of us it looks awful, real. So you can think, however people get this, why they follow this propaganda, but I assure you that they get the wrong reason. Because they got the wrong reason. Because despite the fact that this propaganda, these messages, they're really awful, very inhumane, however, the very imagery of this film, this aesthetic of this film, is extremely attractive. Everything is so beautiful. So it's beautiful music. It's very pretty actresses. And more important, this love story, what is interesting, love story between this Sine, the girl who proposed to this blind soldier, it is developed as normal romance. It is developed as normal romance. And this is the first film which I ever seen in North Korea when there is a hug involved, really passion. There is a passion between the people. So the whole movie, it reminds Bollywood story, with all these bright colors, beautiful music, lots of dances, etc. And I found myself, when I watched this film, when I showered this morning, I used to hum this song, after this. I thought that I got this propaganda with just a few more watching, and probably I'll follow the course, because it's very attractive aesthetically. It's very aesthetically attractive. What is even more important? Because I'm not saying about this. I'm not saying about the beauty of this film, but just to show you how North Korean propagandists work. What what aesthetic messages they use to just make people digest this propaganda. This Lee Chung-woo, who is this famous screenwriter, he is very skillful in delivering this. So what is interesting that this message is closely intertwined into genuine humanism, and even even lyrics of this song. It's not talking about loyalty to the party, about something high political things. It's about normal, just about normal choice, a good choice of a man or a woman. Just about future spouse. There's the words like some girls like men with money, the other girls like men with good looks, but I prefer a man who has good heart. And then this part, the other part of the song is men say. Some men love girls for beauty, some men love girls for their good family, but I prefer just a girl with good heart. So there is very good, and there is nothing inhumane in this song. You know, there's nothing which people would object. So this is the one of the methods how masculine propaganda works, and probably appeal to some people. And this is when I watched the film, I started to understand why things like that happen in North Korea. And even more important thing, when I watched the film with my South Korean students, and this is not just simple South Korean students, this is students from Faculty of North Korean Studies who are very aware about all this North Korean propaganda, and still I found some girls who just watching this just with their mouth open, and they find this film very attractive. So this is how this romantic narration starts to employ this propaganda method. This is very new. I would like to say this is very new in my experience. So what is important? This Yǒngye Kunin, they're entitled to a bright future. This is always these things they finish with the marriage at the end, and this heavily idealized narrative, and no mentioning of any material problems which caregiving of Yǒngye Kunin's life, and even the final marriage scene when those standing nearby the soldier, his dark glasses, it looks like pretty, how to say that, a pretty accessory to him, rather than a testimony that this is a person with some handicap. So this is very romantic fairy tale picture of the United Kingdom. It's of course, and this is interesting, this is contrasted to the elegantly gloomy and ostracized experience of those with consumers and individualist tendencies. That because this girl she lives totally gloomy life, which is forgotten by everybody around, and nobody visiting her places, and she's totally ostracized by her community. So this is how it is dichotomy between people with communal values and people with individualistic tendencies. So overall, this heroism is obligatory. Hero's life is full of appreciation and support of the entire society. Beautiful men and women hurry to propose to them out of appreciation of the nobility of their act. And in North Korean propaganda, that duty and self-sacrifice are obligatory, yet they are aesthetically attractive, socially appreciated, and free of pain, sweat, and blood. What is important? Another story. This is not a film, but just a short story, Mirror, which was based on documentary events of the girls who were severely burned during the state and sacred trees. So what happened? In reality? She was one of these girls. Some of them died, but one of the girls was indeed proposed by a beautiful, just a very handsome naval officer. And as North Korean propaganda materials said, that the whole society was looking toward their marriage. So you feel this sense of, forcing this guy to marry the girl. So they married. They had a baby, and after a few years after that, Kim Jong-un sent the girl to send this lucky girl to some foreign plastic surgery clinics, and she was quickly recovered and as good as new and even better. And this is the story how this fictional story, how she never had any mirrors in her home, but now her husband brought her a new big mirror. How happy they are! What is even more important? This is the first story which I ever read in North Korean literature which involved erotic scenes. It's a erotism between this girl who is just a disabled soldier and this naval officer. the interesting thing is that North Korean literature is not devoid of eroticism overall, but this is very direct and it's very traditional because this act of love is depicted in traditional North Korean rhetoric. It's like a cloud pouring over this fertile soil, and after that the heroine got pregnant. So it's very direct, and so it's very strange. It's very new for me, at least, you know. So this is, as you see, so North Korean soldiers on the cultural front, they utilize all the possible, all the measures, all the artistic methods to attract people to this message, to deliver this case, just to deliver this message of propaganda, just a message of beautiful life, you know, just beautiful exploit. And this is another story. This is another picture which shows you the girl and the boy who just marrying together. So she waited for him from young, so they live together and live happily ever after. So this story shows us that probably this works of art shows us why probably North Korean all this Yǒngye Kunin and all this propaganda works, because it works it works by very simple attractions, simple romance, which North Korean propaganda utilizes, and also it demonstrates a new approach, a new word in North Korean militarism. So militarism which serves for community, militarism which serves for just interpersonal relations of people. So, and this is probably all which I would like to say today. So, if you have any questions, please ask.
Thank you very much, Professor Gabroussenko, for your excellent presentation. As you pointed out at the beginning of the talk, that since the 1950s, North Korea has not been involved in wars or military action. Over the years, though, the North Korean military has sent advisors for training and things to Africa. Have we got any stories of Yǒngye Kunin from those, Zimbabwe or no?
At least me. Probably you have something?
Oh, no.
No, because no. What is interesting, North Korean military, all this military space, it's always inside the country. It's always nationally oriented. So there is no connection between military of North Korea and any other type of military. Even the case, that Korean War was actually won, or not won, not by North Korean standards, it was won by Chinese volunteers. Because we see 2 million for how many Chinese were involved. And even this essential part of North Korean culture is always downplayed. Because it's a thing which always fascinated me. Because when I investigated the case of North Korean philosophy of foreigners, I found, to my great surprise, I found very few mentioning of Chinese. You can find good Englishmen in North Korean propaganda, or good Frenchmen, but very few Chinese. So why? Because probably Chinese involvement and just relations with military was indeed very serious. And this is something that North Korean propaganda always downplays. Very few mentioned. So I will be very surprised if there was something like that.
Any other questions? Okay, back here.
Thank you very much. Fascinating. I was wondering if the North Korean government gives any kind of financial support, such as a monthly pension to the wounded North Korean soldiers.
Yes, but in North Korea there is no such thing as monthly pension or something. These are just entitlements, some entitlements. So all the system is very fluid. It's not something that is fixed like in America or in other veterans, not other work with veterans. It could some lump sum of money or lump sum of rights or something like this. And what is even more important, the attitude of North Koreans, just the propagated attitude toward North Korean Yǒngye Kunin. Because, for instance, quite recently I came across the information that Yǒngye Kunin in North Korea, they were involved in some robbery. And just because they were Yǒngye Kunin, they were able to avoid punishment. Because this treatment of them is preferential treatment, it's positive discrimination. But there is no such fixed thing. In North Korea, there is nothing fixed and forever. Because in fact, all this money and pension, it will go to nothing. You know, because in North Korea, all the public distribution system, it doesn't work anymore properly. So it's probably some lump sums, it's some, some benefits, some presents. North Korean, all those North Korean benefits, they go in the form of presents. Every time when you get something from the state, it's presented as the present of the leader or something like this. But they are not forgotten. That's what I would like to say. They're not forgotten. But the reality of their life, unfortunately, it's not as bright as this Bollywood-style movies depict, of course, because in most cases, they have the same problem as people with disabilities all over the world have. Because sometimes when this blind soldier, for instance, the only thing which he can, the only thing which he knows is shooting and nothing more. So, and he's blind. So what is he doing in the future? So we don't know. So this is the problem. So they of course they have problems. The situation is not as rosy as North Korean, but the society takes care of them. It's reality.
Yeah, I was just wondering if you had any sort of numbers, essentially how many people get this classification, and has that gotten more common over the last 20, 30 years, or have standards gotten tougher and now it's less common?
Unfortunately, there is no testing available to just at least from what I know. But the only thing which I know that all this increasing number of Yǒngye Kunin, the society experienced increasing number of Yǒngye Kunin with all huge industrial projects, such as Masam Dam, for instance. When this Masam Dam construction started, there was a flow of information about Yǒngye Kunin, about beautiful girls who married another Yǒngye Kunin. That's what it is. So this we have only indirect testimonies that the number of these people is increasing. And of course, another thing is North Korean testimonies of North Korean refugees. They say that the number of these people increased. The very topic of Yǒngye Kunin is suddenly surfaced in 1980s, at the end of 1980s. Before it was 1950 and 1980s, there was almost nothing. Almost nothing. All Yǒngye Kunin were all, just in all cases, they were deceased soldiers of Korean War.
One last question.
Thanks for your excellent presentation. I wonder if there is a gender division, although you mentioned there is none, in the novel Mirror is based on a real incident, but as far as I know, all the films depicting Yǒngye Kunin, there is always a disabled male soldier, but I've never watched a female soldier supposed by a beautiful handsome man, and there is the call for sacrifices always addressed to women, also in later mission. So it's actually a simple question. Do you know of any films? The different way around.
This was in my hometown. That was one of the episodes. Why? There was one episode when the girl was considering her action, because when Sinet, this character who proposed to the soldier, she wanted to she was thinking about her decision, and she went to a commanding officer of the guy. And he encouraged her, and she found that the commanding officer himself, he's the guy who married half paralyzed. So his wife is half paralyzed, and she's Yǒngye Kunin as well.
Right.
So that's what it is. So that's one of the cases. Of course,
But it's not idolized in the film. She finds out later that there was a case, but the wife of the it's not the one who is the star of the film. So it's
no, but it's a passionate. That's a character who inspired her, who encouraged her. So what I would like to say that of course in reality, much more girls are sacrificing themselves in North Korea for the cases in the cases like this. But I'm saying about this intentions of North Korean propaganda. At least there are some endeavors to make it gender neutral. That's my perception. I think that this is very just because this is a guy who actually inspired her. He is her older comrade, and his this half paralyzed wife became her older friend. If you watch the film, yeah? I think it's of course it's a passing episode, but this episode is based on romantic story between the two. But I think it's also important. It's important film. And here, of course, there's another case. But of course, I agree that there are much more girls. That I won't say that this is intention. That there is an intention. I know that it's a bit of my disagreement with Professor Kim So-Hyun, because she says that it's strictly gender specified. She said that in North Korean propaganda, when there is a girl who is handicapped, it's the community who's going to, or the neighborhood community which is going to take care of her. But in the case of men, it's always a beautiful girl. But I think it's not exactly the case. It's not exactly the case. It's not an intention in North Korean propaganda. I think so. Because I think these two cases, they're quite representative.
Okay, so thank you.